What's going on, everybody? Welcome into TD Garden. I'm Justin Turpin. He's Tom Carroll. We're here right after the Celtics just wrapped up their regular season with a 93-86 win over the Charlotte Hornets. And through all the conversations in the middle of the season about, is this team good enough to win another championship? What is wrong with the Celtics? We dealt with it for 8 weeks. They finished with 61 wins, just 3 games off of their pace from last year.
Yeah, and we talked about last season how this was a historic team and it was exciting, but it feels like a different vibe going into this postseason with 3 less wins, yet we're kind of like, okay, well, they're kind of banged up, and it's not like it was last year because there was that lull in the middle of the year. So it's interesting, right? Because I personally think this team is just as good, but the vibe isn't the same.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they are better. And Charles Lee said that the other day. He was here last year with this team. He was the Joe Mazzulla's lead assistant, and he said this team is better than they were a season ago. And I go back to this with Steve Kerr. When the Celtics visited the Warriors, I think it was in January, Steve Kerr said what they're going through is completely normal. Every reigning champion goes through these lulls. It's kind of inevitable. The Celtics going into the season had to have known that there was going to be points where they didn't look themselves, right? It's just going to happen. You're not always going to have that motivation coming off a championship. That's just the reality of it, especially when guys are coming in out of the lineup, right? Drew was dealing with something. Jalen was dealing with something. Sam Hauser was dealing with something. So everyone's kind of dealing with something at once, and you're not necessarily giving it your best every night. You're not giving it your all every night. And a telltale sign of that was when they were losing those margin battles, which is what they pay attention to the most. And last week I asked Joe Mazzulla, like, what went in to the 25 offensive rebounds they had against Washington? And he was like, rebounding is almost solely effort. So when they're getting out rebounded stuff, it was pretty obvious what was going down. But regardless, when you're talking 3 games off of the pace they were on last year, or 3 games off from the win total they had last year, that's a couple of possessions. That's a couple of, let's like clean it up down the stretch. Let's not make turnovers down in the final minutes here, like Drew Holiday against Atlanta, whatever it may be. Like, that's a blown whistle, whatever. It's a couple of possessions. We're only talking 25, 30 possessions keeping this team from being back to where they were last year, 3 games away.
Yeah, you can point to almost the exact moments, right? There, you can really even boil it down to like 5 moments where their record could be better than it was last season. And with all of the influx of what we've seen with guys in and out of the lineup this year, it is kind of crazy, but it speaks to something that you and I were talking about during the game. Their depth this season is better than it was last year.
Because you got a guy like Pritchard. And it's funny because they didn't add anyone into the rotation. The top 9's the top 9. The top 9 is who we're going to see in the postseason. It's just guys took leaps. Like Peyton Pritchard took another step. Sam Hauser, I know he started off slow, and I alluded to earlier he was dealing with that back injury. He started finding his shot. And you know what you're getting with Sam Hauser. He's going to be a 40% three-point shooter every year, and he's always going to do that. He's going to give you production. So you know what you're getting with him. And then Pritchard takes a 6 man of the year leap. Like, what is he, minus 1,200 to win the award now? Like, that guy is going to be the 6 man of the year. So that makes a big difference. And that really helped them throughout the middle of the season parts when they were struggling there, is they had a guy like Peyton Pritchard who was able to shoulder the load a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think Cornette, too, has been fantastic this season. Like, someone who Celtics fans used to kind of joke about when Cornette would have big games.
He's still doing these Derek White smear campaigns like a Tommy point. Like, he's fun.
Right. And he's an actual legit rotational guy for you now that is impactful on both ends of the floor. So you have a solid 9 here, whereas last year you probably didn't feel great outside of that 7.5, depending on what you were getting out of Hauser, right? And then Pritchard just had these moments at the end of quarters and halves. So I feel really good about this team. It's really going to come down to Jaylen Brown's knee.
Right.
And if that knee can hold up for 4 rounds, then I feel good about the Celtics hosting finals games here in June.
I'd also say, too, is they're in a way the injuries they're kind of going to help them moving forward. Celtics didn't have as much versatility last year. They didn't see as much double big. You didn't see some of the combinations that you have this year. Like, look at the Luke Cornette, Jason Tatum, for example. You knew they could play together, but you didn't know how efficient it is. That's one of the best duos in the league right now. Their numbers in the pick and roll are up there with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. So that's a big deal. And I think they're more versatile this year. They're more deep this year because they've been able to kind of weather these storms of these injuries. And obviously, they're going to need everyone healthy to go out and win another championship. To get there, they're going to need to go have everyone healthy. They're well aware of the fact that of the last 6 champions, none of them have made it out of the second round. That is something they understand. So they're going to need that.
Well, you brought up a stat too when we were talking post game. I like bringing those off the record, off air conversations onto the video here about the win total here for them as a defending champion.
Yeah, I got some numbers on that. Yes, so there's 61 wins. They're the most since the 2015-16 Warriors that won 73 games and obviously lost in the finals. The only 2 teams, so since the Celtics did it, so the Celtics did it in 2008, 2009. After they won the championship, they won 62 games, I believe it was. But since then, there's only been 2 teams to win 60 games in their title defense season. That was the Heatles with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. They won 60-something after they won the finals. They two-peated that year. The Warriors, after they won, they believe it was their first NBA finals, they went 73-9, ended up going to the finals, having a 3-1 series lead and losing. So you're in good company there.
Really good. I mean, those are iconic teams.
Right.
You have the LeBron Heat and the beginning of the Warriors dynasty, and now these guys.
It's been 9 years since a reigning champion has won 60 games. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, the title defenses, again, it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. It's inevitable that these struggles are going to happen, but yet these guys came in, they were focused, and they have enough talent and enough depth to weather that storm. Like, when you win 60 games, that's a hell of an accomplishment in the NBA. Like, regardless,
it's a historic accomplishment.
Right.
I mean, that you can count on, how many
this
hands.
This was the 15th time it's happened in franchise history.
Right. So that was going to be my point. It doesn't happen in this storied franchise history. It doesn't happen that often.
And of those previous 14, 7 went on to win the NBA Finals. 7 of them. So it takes a good team to do this, obviously. Like, it seems so obvious, but it's not easy to do what this team just did. And I think 60 games was something they wanted to get. They wanted to reach that milestone. They knew, again, there was going to be a lull. There was going to be times they had to weather that storm, but they wanted to close the season on a good note, and they did. And they did that starting at the beginning of the All-Star break. They went into the All-Star break really hot, carried that over, and they were 23-4, or whatever it might have been.
They have
since the All-Star break
on a weak schedule to end the year, and that's what champions should do. They did not sink to the competition, which we've seen this team do in recent years. So I think that's another sign of them being a real champion now, having come off the championship. And then I think today, with what Pritchard did, 3rd straight year going 30+ in game 82. But that's emblematic of like this team taking everything seriously.
Yeah.
They did have their lulls, but down the stretch here, they've whipped themselves into shape here. And I think the Pritchard performance again kind of shows you that this team knows that they need to give it 100% all the way through here to win a title.
It seems so obvious on the surface that a team that's trying to accomplish something really hard to do and winning a championship should be locked in and focused every day. But the Celtics actually do that, and they take pride in the fact that the people before them, the banners hanging behind us here, the people that laid those down, those are Bruins banners, but the Celtics ones, you can see those too. They're on the other side.
Yeah.
The people that laid those banners, the reason those are there is because these guys, these past teams were so locked in and focused. Like, that's impressive. And for this team, and this group especially, maybe it's a little bit of Celtic City documentary talking to me a little bit, but you can see the parallels between these other historic teams we talk about, right? In the 60 wins is a good place to start. The last time that they had 2 consecutive 60-win seasons was the 07-08 team and the 08-09 team. Before that, you'd have to go back to the 80s with Larry Bird. And those are the teams kind of being depicted in the documentary a little bit. So maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but there's some obvious parallels between the two where you can see, like, this team is going to be talked about as these other teams were, these immortalized teams. Like, this is going to be one of them. So I guess enjoy the postseason run, really take it in, because this is a special group.
Yeah, I mean, we're firmly in an era for the Celtics here. Like, 2024 was not a one-off for this team. And anyone that has watched this team and followed this team knows that. I mean, it was a 7-year odyssey to win that championship. Yeah. And they kind of finally broke through. And that odyssey was maybe a little bit longer than some of these other teams that have gone on runs had. But that's just because you had Tatum and Brown sort of sneaking in some conference finals appearances early in their career. Ones that these all-time great players didn't have. Like Jordan wasn't making deep playoff runs early in his career. The Tatum and Brown came into a good organization that was ready to be competitive in a weaker Eastern Conference. So we're kind of in the mix here, that 08-09 run for the Celtics. Like, we're going to see a few years here of this Celtics team making deep playoff runs, continuing to do that.
They also won right when they were supposed to.
Yep.
Right? Like, if you look at when Jordan won his first, when you look LeBron, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, all of these guys that, like, on the Mount Rushmore of NBA players, and everyone's different, but like these Hall of Famers, these all-time greats, all won around the same age. And there was a couple that won earlier, but a lot of them win around their late 20s, the 27, 28, maybe 29. Like Tatum and Brown were dead smack in the middle of that. And now you're just looking at it, it's like they are entering the peak of their powers, and we're watching it unfold live here. And you can see it really close with Jason Tatum. Like the game's just so slowed down for him. Like he's in complete control. And that was really evident last year on the NBA Finals stage where he didn't get to – the moment wasn't too big for him. Like he could have tried to go pound for pound with Luka Doncic. That's a guy that you hear all this talk about being the face of the league. That's the guy that he's vying with to be the face of the league, right? And he didn't let that get to his head. He didn't let that ego inflate. He wasn't out here taking 40 shots, right? He was okay using his gravity to create for others and create for the team. And it's just a sign of maturity. And I think they've taken a step forward with the maturity this year. And that's why you see, and I know it's not the most perfect metric. Like assists aren't perfect by any means because obviously the player that you're passing to has to make it. But that's why his assist numbers are up. And you see like there's just an unselfishness to this team. And that's what every opposing coach praises them for. And that's what's going to make them so dangerous come the playoffs.
He's such a complete player now.
Right.
And he has been for a few years.
And you knew it was coming.
It's too bad that the team is as stacked as it is for Tatum, right? Because he really does get overlooked in these conversations for top 5 guy in the league.
Just wild for a guy who's going on his 4th consecutive year, first team All-NBA, and he's still like not really in that conversation. I mean, part of it's his demeanor, and this conversation's been had plenty. I mean, it feels like it's been a thing for a while now. It's been a couple of years now where Tatum's ascended to the top of the top and still doesn't necessarily get the recognition and credit he deserves. And maybe that's demeanor. And I think that part of it is that. Like, they want a guy that's rah-rah. They want this big personality where there's nothing wrong with the way Tatum conducts himself. Like, yeah, he gets mad at
it
officials.
Works for this team.
Right, it works for this team. That's what they want. That's exactly what they need. So, obviously, he's the key. And, you mentioned that Jaylen Brown's knee is going to be really important going forward. And he's going through the injections, and Joe Mazzulla said pregame today that that's just part of the rehab process, trying to wrap him up a little bit here. But they're going to have 2 to 3 practices this week. I'd imagine he's present. I don't know how much he'll really do. He seemed to think this was strictly a pain tolerance thing, and he was really just trying to give it a go to see how much he can do on the knee. And we've talked about it. It made sense to do it then. But now push is coming to shove. It's playoff time. Next time we're here, it's going to be for real.
Yeah, and I'm very curious to see who they play. I think that if it's Orlando in the first round, that this team will be able to take care of business in a easier fashion, so to speak. I think Atlanta, if it ends up being the Hawks in the first round, could steal a game or 2. And I know this team is awesome, right? So don't freak out if it takes 6 games to beat Atlanta. Like they're scrappy.
They're scrappy. I mean, Trae Young's going to give you a big game.
Yep.
And same thing with Orlando. Like if they were to play Orlando can't score, but they're a very good defensive team. Mm-hmm. So there might be a night the Celtics shoot.
And Orlando plays Boston like really well.
It's actually one of the 2 or 3 teams that Joe Mazzulla has a losing record against. And granted, like losses like the earlier this week, you throw that out the window, right? It doesn't matter. They played the main Celtics and still couldn't crack 100 points. Like when you're watching that, it's like this team. When I say this team cannot score, they literally cannot score the basketball. Yeah, they scored 96 points against the main Celtics the other night in a game they had to win. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It doesn't really matter who they play in the first round. I think everyone's kind of overlooking that. Same thing they did last year, right? Like everyone kind of overlooked that Miami Heat series because they knew the real fun starts in the second round. And
although I was kind of feeling the Heat after no pun intended, after game 2, just, having
back, though, it was
PTSD about Heat loss past,
Caleb Martin all over again.
Yeah, I was like, you got to be kidding me.
They hit 22, 23
I'm glad they cleaned that up.
Well, that was the thing. And we were talking about this earlier, too. Like, they were so dominant in the postseason last year. Obviously, they went 16-3, but the only game that they really, really lost, and everyone forgets about Game 4 in Dallas. Like, there was no explanation for that other than Dallas was on their deathbed, really just trying to survive, and they played harder than the Celtics. Okay, they got outclassed in that one, and who knows, maybe they wanted to win it here. Maybe it was the basketball gods looking out for them. So you don't really look at that one. Game 2 against Miami, they took 23 three-pointers from a team that doesn't necessarily shoot the ball well from three. If you're making 22 to 23 three-pointers in today's NBA, you're oftentimes going to win, especially if you're matching the volume of these Celtics. The only game that they actually really lost in postseason was Game 2 against Cleveland. That was the one game they really kind of got outclassed. I mean, Game 4 in Dallas, like I said, doesn't count. It's erased from everyone's memory because of what happened the next game when they blew them out here. And it's funny because that's like in NBA Finals history. I think it was top 5 in like point differential in a loss.
Right. No,
nobody will
ugly.
ever talk about it because it's just going to be scratched from the record. Yeah, it doesn't matter because they did that and they came back here. So I'm excited. I can't wait. Can't wait to be doing it with you guys, hanging out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And next time we're back here, either Saturday or Sunday. I think it'll be Sunday. So we'll see you back here Sunday, and it's going to be fun. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you when the fun begins next weekend.